Let's talk about something big happening on the world stage. Imagine a brand new global organization spearheaded by Donald Trump that's poised to completely shake up international diplomacy. It's called the Board of Peace, and getting in has a very, very high price of admission.
So, what do you think it costs to get a permanent seat at this new, very powerful table? The answer? Well, it's pretty staggering.
$1 billion. Just let that sink in for a second. We're not talking about a pledge or a future promise. We're talking about cash.
That's right, $1 billion, paid in cash just within the first year. And this isn't some minor detail. It's a fundamental part of how this new global entity is structured. It basically throws the old rulebook for international diplomacy right out the window.
So, let's dig in. What exactly is this Board of Peace? Is it a genuine new approach to global stability, or is it something else? We're going to unpack the whole story from how it started to the firestorm of controversy it's already creating. So in his own words, posted on Truth Social, Donald Trump calls it the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled. I mean, that's the official pitch, right? An unmatched, top-tier institution for world peace.
But then, almost immediately, you hear a completely different take. The Financial Times called it a fledgling club of autocrats. The Guardian went with a pay-to-play club. And that huge difference in perception, that's really at the heart of this entire debate.
Now, this is where the backstory gets really interesting, because it kind of pulls in two different directions. On one hand, the Board of Peace grew out of the 2025 Gaza Peace Plan. It even had a limited authorization from UN Security Council Resolution 2083, specifically for post-war reconstruction. But on the other hand, when it was officially launched at Davos, it happened at the exact same time the White House announced the U.S. was pulling out of 66 other international organizations. So you can see how that signals a much, much bigger shift in foreign policy.
All right, to really understand what all the fuss is about, you have to look past the big headlines and get into the nitty-gritty, the fine print of the board's own founding charter, because that's where the real power structures are defined.
And the first thing that just jumps right off the page is this role: Chairman for life. The charter doesn't just create the position, it explicitly names Donald Trump to fill it. We're talking about a role with no term limit, totally separate from his U.S. presidency, and it gives him the personal power to name his own successor.
And the chairman's authority is, well, immense. He alone decides which countries get invited and which get kicked out. He appoints and fires the entire executive board. He can issue resolutions all by himself, veto anything the board decides, and like we just saw, he controls who takes over after him. I mean, that level of centralized power in one person's hands is pretty much unheard of for an international body.
And when you put it side by side with the United Nations, you can really see just how different these two models are. The UN is built on this idea of multilateralism, where every country gets a voice. The Board of Peace, it's a top-down system, completely controlled by the chairman, where you literally have to pay to play. It's a completely different philosophy of how the world should be run.
So, as you can probably guess, dropping an organization this disruptive onto the world stage has kicked off a massive and very divided global reaction. The reaction was fast, and it was polarized. You've got 19 nations on one side, countries like Argentina, Hungary, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, that have all signed the charter. But then on the other side, you have a whole bunch of major Western democracies, France, Germany, the UK, who have all basically said no thank you. It has created a very clear split in the international community.
Brazil's President Lula probably summed up the criticism most directly. He said, and I'm quoting here, "President Trump is proposing to create a new UN where only he is the owner." And that really gets to the core fear that many countries have, that this is less about cooperation and more about one person's unilateral power.
And the reasons for saying no are really telling. France said it was worried the board was trying to usurp the role of the United Nations. The UK was very concerned that Russia was invited. Slovenia just called it a dangerous interference. And then there's Canada's story, which is fascinating. Their invitation was actually pulled back after the government publicly announced they weren't going to pay the billion-dollar fee for a seat. All of this leads us to the biggest question of all. Is this new Board of Peace designed to work alongside the existing world order, or is it meant to challenge it head-on? Which brings us to the elephant in the room, right? Is the Board of Peace supposed to be a supplement to the UN, or is it actually meant to be a replacement? The answer to that could change, well, pretty much everything about global politics. Okay, here's the legal heart of the whole conflict.
Remember that UN Security Council resolution? It gave the board a very narrow, very specific job, reconstruction in Gaza. But the actual charter that countries signed, it doesn't even mention Gaza. Instead, it claims this huge, sweeping, global mandate to step in and resolve any conflict anywhere in the world.
And that's why you have legal experts just sounding all the alarms. They're pointing out that this self-declared global authority, well, it has no real basis in international law. The whole structure, with so much power in one person's hands, flies in the face of the principle of sovereign equality, the idea that all nations are equal. And with no UN oversight, who holds the board accountable if something goes wrong? It's a huge question.
Now, to really understand the potential pitfalls here, a lot of historians are looking back about a century ago to the UN's very ambitious, but ultimately very failed predecessor.
Yeah, the League of Nations. It was founded after World War I with this incredibly noble goal of making sure a war like that never happened again. But it was just plagued with problems. It was totally powerless when Japan invaded Manchuria. Its sanctions against Italy were a joke. By the time World War II kicked off, the League was, for all intents and purposes, completely irrelevant.
And when you look at the parallels, they are pretty striking. The League was crippled because major powers like the US never joined. Today, the Board of Peace is being rejected by key European powers. The League had no army, no way to enforce its decisions. The board is in a similar boat, relying entirely on its members' goodwill. Critics call the board a selective club, which sounds a lot like the League, which failed because its members wouldn't act. The fear is the same, that it could end up weakening international law instead of strengthening.
So that's the big question we're left with. Are we watching the birth of a new, more effective way to keep the peace? Or is history just repeating itself with another grand, ambitious project that's doomed from the start? What happens next is going to shape our world for a long, long time.